So I was walking down the street and I saw this little girl and she was crying. And so I went up to her and I was like, "What's wrong, little girl?" And she was like, "Oh, my dad and mom are yelling at each other again." And I was like, "All right. You think it's safe at home?" And she was like, "No, I think my dad's gonna go on a rampage." And I was like, "All right, we're gonna get you to an orphanage, and I'm gonna see if I can resolve the conflict in the meantime." And she was like, "All right." And so I I dropped her off at the orphanage, and I went back to her house, and the dad answered, and he's like, "Where's my daughter?" And I was like, "I took her to an orphanage." And he was like, "What? Why would you do that? He has loving parents, and what she need to go to an orphanage for?" And I was like, "Because," and I was like, "Because she's afraid that you're going on a rampage." And the man was like, "Ain't no such thing happening. What are you, some kind of pedophile?" And I was like, "Sir, I understand what you're saying. I'm a stranger, and I picked up this girl and literally put her in my car." And he's like, "Yeah, you're a pedophile." And I was like, "Homie, I I was walking down the street and I saw this girl crying. Why do you think she's crying? Is it because she thinks I'm a pedophile?" And the man was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Homie, I'm sorry you feel this way about me, but I saw this girl crying, and she told me that it was because her dad was yelling at her mom and she didn't feel like she was safe." And he was like, Really, she was crying. I didn't understand. It's just that we're going through a hard time right now." And I was like, "Oh, I understand, being the provider of the family, the pressure can get you down." And he was like, "Yeah, actually," he was like, "Yeah, actually, our family's going into debt, and I just think that the wife should be working a little bit." And I was like, "That's understandable. All right, you're going into debt, and you think it's time that the wife starts contributing financially, and you're starting to get frustrated that she doesn't want to contribute to this debt that the family's in." And he's like, "Yeah, the wife is so lazy." And I was like, I understand. I understand that the wife isn't contributing as much as she should be to the finances." And he was like, "But look at your daughter. Do you want your daughter to be raised like this, and where she feels unsafe at home?" And the man was like, "Of course I don't want this for my daughter." And I was like, "All right." And I was like, "All right, what do you think that you can do differently So your daughter wants to be home instead of at an orphanage. And the man was like, all right, I could stop yelling and be more reasonable. And I was like, all right. So what do you think that you need to say to your wife to get her to contribute to the finances without having to yell at her? And he was like, well, she has been complaining that I don't show enough gratitude towards how well she's raised this girl. And I was like, all right. So you think that she has done a good job raising this girl? And he was like, of course. Of course I believe she has. And I was like, okay, we could start with that. We could start with your gratitude towards how well she's raised the daughter. And so we sat down together, me, the man, and the wife. And the wife was like, who's this guy? And he was like, oh, this guy's gonna help us with our marriage. And she was like, all right, I'll take any, I'll get any help I can get. Our marriage is pretty doomed. And so I was really impressed with what the man did next. He didn't lash out at the woman for saying that their marriage is doomed. He started off by saying that he really appreciated that the wife was looking after this kid, and she's only like 6 years old, and she's already like a super genius. She understands quantum physics and string theory and unified field theory. And the husband was like really appreciative of how the wife raised her kid to be a 6-year-old genius. And she was like, thank you. It's time I got some appreciation for what our kid has become at such a young age. And the husband was like, oh, definitely. But the problem is we're putting this kid through private school at 6 years old. And it's putting really financial pressure on me to put her through private school when she at such a young age. And she was like, I understand. We need to make sure our 6-year-old graduates high school and goes to college. And the man was like, wouldn't you agree that our kid is pretty independent? And she was like, oh yes, she is like amazingly independent. She's only 6 years old and she's already cooking her own breakfast, potty trained, and she's already like making innovations in that house. Like just yesterday, we were having like this issue with the Wi-Fi, and she knew exactly what the problem was, and so she's a very impressive girl. And the man was like, yeah, so don't you think that by you working, we could get this girl through private school so she can graduate with the best grades and get into the best college? And she was like, yeah, because she's so independent, we could get her into the best private school, the best college, and I could just work part-time and contribute to the finances and still be there for my little girl to see her graduate high school at 6 years old. And so, as you can see, boys, it was really that starting off conversation with this appreciation that got the wife open to change, because when you see the glass is half full, then you want to make that progress, you want to make that progress to make the glass full. But if you see the glass is half empty, you think, oh, it's half empty. It feels hopeless, we gotta make all this progress to get the glass full. And the fact that we're half empty is just really demotivating. And so start the conversation with appreciation, boys. And that's all I got for the video. Goodbye.